We're now on Daf Mem Hey, and we're up to Masechet, which is 3 lines down from the top. The Gemara is raising an objection to Rabbi Yochanan. Let's just review Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says that although the sheet of some Tanoim, Shimon HaTeimoni, and others against Rabbi Akiva is that there's no mamzeris unless there's violation of Chayve Krisus. Chayve Lav Malone does not generate mamzeris. Nevertheless, Hakol Modim, everybody agrees unanimously that the son or the daughter of an Eved V'Yakum Abol Bas Yisrael is a mamzer mamzeris. Masechet, we learned in the Brayso V'Kochav Eved Abol Bas Yisrael Avlad mamzer. And that itself, the Tanakam of this Brayso would support Rabbi Yochanan. But Rabbi Yochanan says Hakol Modim. That's not really so, because Rav Shimon ben Yehuda Omer, Ein mamzer el mimishe isuro isur eravav yonash karetz. The violation of an avera chamura of karetz plus the onesh, those two combine to generate mamzeris. Obviously, Eved V'Yakum Abol Bas Yisrael does not fit the bill. It's neither a chi of karetz, nor is it an onesh of any severe level. And therefore, the vlad of such a relationship would not be a mamzer, even though in kedushin tovsin the Eved V'Yakum. And here the Aruch LaNer, was baffled. Why is this a kasha of Yochanan? Maybe Rabbi Yochanan holds like Tanakama. But the impression you get from Rabbi Yochanan is that even if I hold I need chayve krisus, that's only because I need an avera chamura in order to undermine the tfisas kedusha, the validity of the marriage. But if I have another reason, without an avera chamura, that although it's lacking the onesh and the chiv karis, nevertheless is no tfisas kedushin, says Rabbi Yochanan, that would certainly, according to everybody, generate mamzeris. But here you see that according to Rav Shimon ben Yehuda, it does not generate mamzeris. So the Gemara therefore says, Ela Omer of Yosef, in truth, we have no proof about the sheet of Shimon HaTeimoni, meaning he requires chayve krisus in order to generate mamzeris. What would he say if there was no tfisas kedushin, even in the absence of chayve krisus, like Eved V'Yakum Abol Bas Yisrael? Umana kol modim. But Rabbi Yochanan didn't have in mind Shimon HaTeimoni. He had in mind Rebbe. And the Gemara is going to prove that Rebbe holds that Eved V'Yakum Abol Bas Yisrael Avlad mamzer. Now, where is Rebbe? Afal Gav, the Rebbe Omer, later on in Daf Nun Beis Amud Beis, that Ein Bia Achar Chalitza, which means if there are 2 Yevamos, Sorrow, Sulazu, that fell for Yibum, he gave Chalitza to one of them, and he was Miyabim the other one. He was Ba'alecha. The second one, says Rebbe, does not need a get. Why? Because once Chalitza was given to one of the 2 tzaros, then that batters up all the tzaros, and therefore we have here Eshes Ach Shelo B'Makom Mitzvah. And the status of the tzara is that she doesn't need a get. That be'ilah could not generate ishus because her status is that of chayve krisus. And ein advarim halalu, this view of Rebbe that the bia or the yibum after chalitza is not kofes, and therefore there's no need for a get. Ein advarim halalu amurim el divrei Rabbi Akiva shaya otze chalutza ke'erva. Rabbi Akiva upgraded, based on a drush, the status of a chalutza to that of an erva. It's not just a violation of lo yivne, kevin shelo bana shuv lo yivne, which is only chivei lavin. But Rabbi Akiva holds that ein kedushin tovsin, in a case of chivei lavin, the vlad is a mamzer, and therefore once there was a chalitza to one of the 2 yevamos, Then we have Chayve Lavim to the other Yevamot. And Valelo Sfirle, Rebbe did not accept sheet of Rabbi Akiva. He accepted sheet of Chachamim. That in Chayve Lavim, Kedushin HaToftzit. Therefore, Chalutza is not like an erva. According to Rabbi Akiva, Chalutza, insofar as it generates a lot of Lo Yivne space, Achiv gets upgraded to the status of an erva. Because Rabbi Akiva holds the Chayve Lavim is an erva, and Kedushin HaToftzit be'arayas, meaning even with Chayve Lavim, and the Vlad is therefore mamzer. But according to Rebbe, he doesn't have that shita of Rabbi Akiva. He holds like the Chacham, the Kedushin HaToftzit b'Chayve Lavim. And therefore Chalutza is not an erva. However, Rebbe continues, and he says, "But ove kolchav v'yevet moda." I admit that the Vlad is a mamzer. So we see that even though Rebbe maintains, like the Chacham of Rabbi Akiva, that you need chayve krisis in order to generate mamzerus, but that's only because chayve krisis is a precondition to undermine the validity of the kedusha, because ein kedusha tos chayve krisis. In the case of Eved V'Yakum, Abol Bas Yisrael, ein kedusha tos be Eved V'Yakum, and therefore, hence, the Vlad is a mamzer. And this is what Rabbi Yochanan had in mind, according to this reinterpretation of Rabbi Yochanan, based on the new position of Rabbi Yosef. Now, how do we know, in fact, that Rebbe holds that in this case of Oved Kochavim V'Yevet Abol Bas Yisrael, the Vlad is a mamzer? The also Rav Dimi came in from Eretz Yisrael, and Omar Rav Yitzchak bar Avudimi, and he said in the name of Rav Yitzchak, Mishum Rabbeinu, Hol Chad Gadia, back to Rabbeinu Rabbi HaKodesh. Now, wait a second. We said that according to Rebbe, the reason why in the case of Chayve Lavim, there's no Mamzerus is because Kedushin Tovsin. In the case of Chayve Krisis, there is Mamzerus against Rabbi Akiva, right? Because it's Ein Kedushin Tovsin. Therefore, comes Rabbi Yochanan, he says, if that be the case, I understand full well that Rebbe would hold Eved Abol Bas Yisrael, etc., is the Vlad as a mamzer, because Ein Kedushin Tovsin. So it's not the Chumras Onesh Avera that generates Mamzerus, but rather Tfisas Kedushin. Rav Achas Sarabira, Rav Tanchum, Breder, Rav Chia, Ishkvar Ako, Poruk Hanu Shvuyasa. These great Tanoim ransomed Jewish girls that were taken as in captivity from the Goyim, the Osu Me'armon, from the Armenian nation. And they brought them to Tveria. And what did they find? Lo and behold, one of the Shvuyos that was just now freed from Shevi in a foreign country was pregnant. Avichada di Abra. Me'ove Kochav. We have no doubt that she became pregnant from a guy. The Asu and the Amoraim came to Kami Rabbi Ami, and they asked Rabbi Ami, what's going to be the status of the child that's born to this Shvuya, a Jewish girl, Shenis Abram Yaakov, who's the father of the child is a guy. Is he a mamzer of the child or not? Amalu Rabbi Ami answered, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Chanina di Amri, all three Amoraim maintain the position that Oved Kochav V'Yevet Abol Bas Yisrael Vlad mamzer. When you have three Amoraim that all paskind unanimously that the Vlad is a mamzer, the halacha has to be like them. Rav Yosef, I don't get it. You're counting up three great Amoraim. I have a great deal of respect for them. But Rabusa Lemechshav Gavre, you're going to paskin based on how many people you count to maintain that position? I'll give you a whole long list of those who are making and say the Vlad is not a mamzer. Harav Ushmuel beBavel. For Yeshua ben Levi bar Kapar B'Eretz Yisrael, the number's already above 3. We got up to 4 already. And who knows how many more? The Amrilei Chalufek, the others have a girsa that we should switch the names here. And it's Bar Kapara. The Aili Ziknei Daram. So instead, they count the Ziknei Daram. The Amri, says Rav Yosef, all the above hold that Ovikov caution. So how do you know what he paskin like those three Amoraim who hold that the Vlad is a mamzer? Why should we say such a thing? Elo Amar Rav Yosef. There's no way you could be machriya the halacha based on counting heads and how many Amoraim hold the Vlad is mamzer. How many Amoraim hold the Vlad is kosher? How are we going to be machriya the halacha? It's based on Rebbe. We go by the Gavar Rabbah. Rebbe, who holds that the Vlad is a mamzer, the Chiasa Rav Dimi, where Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, and Rebbe, of course, was in Eretz Yisrael. Omar, he said in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Dimi, Mishum Rabbeinu Amru, in the name of Rebbe, they said, Ovik Chom Mevet Abol Bas Yisrael Vlad Mamzer. So you want to know why we're going to pass the L'chumra that Evid V'Yakum Abol Bas Yisrael Vlad Mamzer? It's not because we're counting Amoraim. Give me a break. But because Rebbe, who's the Gadol Adar, passing like that. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Omer, as we saw earlier, Havlad, well, we expect him to say Havlad kosher, but he says Havlad Mekulkal. What's that all about? Leman. Vis-a-vis whom or what is the Vlad considered Mekulkal? Ilay Melakal. Well, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi himself goes on record as saying the Vlad is kosher. So a child that was born to an Eved V'Yakum Abol Bas Yisrael, according to Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, is kosher. He's allowed to come into Kal Yisrael. So you can't tell me that he had in mind, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, that the baby, when he grows up, will be kosher l'kol. I'm sorry, meaning since Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi holds that the Vlad is kosher, not a mamzer, so what could Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi have in mind when he said Mekulkal? Ella says, you know what Mekulkal means? It cannot mean that he's Mekulkal L'kal and he can't enter Kal Yisrael. He's a mazz. We know that Rabbi Yehuda holds that the Vlad is a kosher, but L'kahuna, we upgrade up the bar and the ante as far as who is kosher L'kahuna. Dekulu Amoroi de Machshere, Rabbi Yehuda holds that even though we have a great cadre, a great group of Amoroim who are Machsher the Vlad, that's only as far as Kal is concerned. But Modu Shavlad Pogum L'kahuna. This Vlad, let's say, for example, it's a Bas, when she goes up, she's not allowed to marry a Kohen. And the Bas is called a Chalola and a Psula L'kohen Hejot. And if she's a Kohenes, she's not allowed to eat Truma B'Beis Aviyah. And Baal al Kohenes, Levia, Yisraelis is Bito Psula L'kuhuna Kamo Bas Cholo. Is Kulu Amoroim to Machshrei Modu Shavlad Pogum L'kuhuna. And what's the basis for such a conclusion? Mikal v'chomer me'almona l'kohen gadol. Almona l'kohen gadol, which is Ein Isur Shavah Bakol. Only the Kohen Gadol is also to marry the Almona, and the Almona can marry a Kohen Hejod. And nevertheless, B'na Pogum, the child is a Chalal, and Posel Midine Kahuna. And again, if you recall in the Shia that we discussed on Omen Aleph, we proved that the Ben is a Pogum from the Pasuk in Chumash. Is Zu, in the case of Bas Yisrael, Li Eved, the Akum She'isura Shavah Bakol, Eino did shebna pagum. And that's how Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi derives the conclusion that the Vlad is pagum, is pasal laguna. So now the Gemara rejects this kal v'chomer. Mali almana l'kohen gadol shekain hiyatzun v'schaleles. The almana herself becomes a chalola, and a Vlad holech achar pagum, and therefore the child is also a chalola from kahuna. Mashen came in the case of Eved v'Akum Abol Bas Yisrael. She herself does not become a chalola, and therefore her child is not pagum l'kahuna. Is hachanami here too in the case of Eved v'Akum Abol Bas Yisrael came at nivala psula v'nischala l'kahuna. Once she had to be with an Eved or an Akum, she becomes psula l'kahuna. Tiyam Rab Yochanan mishum Rab Shimon. Minayin la'oved kol chavim v'Eved Abol Bas Yisrael. Al kohenes alavi al Yisrael psula. If she's bas kohen, she can't eat truma b'beis avi. If she's a Levi Yisraelis, she cannot eat truma if she's married to a kohen and they have children. And even after the death of her husband, who's a kohen, where the ikar din would be in a normal situation that she's allowed to continue to eat truma. But if she had to be a relation with an akum or an eved, she becomes disqualified from eating truma, and for sure with a kal v'chomer, she's disqualified from marrying a kohen. Shenemar ubas kohen kisiya almona grusha is misha yeshlo dine almonus v'gerishin ba yatsu ovei kacham v'evet she'ein lahem almonus v'gerishin ba. So when we're saying that if almona, just 1 second, right, it says in the parsha of Truma, Bas Kohen Kisi Almana Ugrusha Milechma Via Tochel, that she goes back to Beis Avia, and she's a Bas Kohen, she can eat Truma, but only Misha Yeshlo Almonas Vigerishim. If she was married off to a Yisrael and he died. Then I read the pasuk V'shavel Beis Avia and Milechma Via Tochel, she can eat Truma. But that's because she was married off to Misha Yeshla Almonas V'gerishim, someone who has issues. But Ovei Kochav Eved, they don't have issues. They don't have a din of Almonas V'gerishim, Ein Kedushin Tovsim, and they passel with a bia Bas Kohen Milechel Truma. So to summarize, this is the basis for Rav Yosef's reinterpretation of Rav Yochanan to the effect that based on the Kal V'chomer from Almana l'Kohen Gadol, we can derive the conclusion that Akum v'Eved Abol Bas Yisrael passes hal l'Kahuna. Omalei Abai turns to Rav Yosef, my chazes to Samchis Ad Rav Dimi. You're relying on Rav Dimi in the name of Rebbe, that the Vlad is a mamzer. Smoch ad Ravin. Ravin had a different tradition in the name of Rebbe, according to which the Vlad is kosher. The Chiyasa Ravin, Omar. When Ravin came, this is what he stated. Rabbi Nassan, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi Modim Ba Letera, that the Vlad V'Yevad Abol Bas Yisrael is kosher love of Bekol. Uman Rabbi Yehuda Nasi Urebi. So we have now clear-cut testimony that Rebbe holds the Vlad is not a mamzer. So therefore, Abai says to Rav Yosef, why are you relying on Rav Dimi when we have a different tradition from Ravin? And furthermore, the Af Rav Modaba. Rav also accepts this principle that the Vlad of an Eved V'Yakum Abol Bas Yisrael is kosher, Le'Teira. And Mutal Lova L'Kol, he's not a mamzer. And now the Gemara is going to tell a story to prove that Rav holds that the child who's born to a father in Akum, his mother's Jewish, he's allowed to marry into the Kol. So once again, Af Rav Modaba Letera, that the Vlad of a Goyish father to a Jewish mother is Mutar B'Kol. He's not a mamzer. Now who? It was a case of the son of a guy whose mother was Jewish. The Asal Akami de Rav, he came from Rav. Omaleh, he asked Rav the following question. The son of an Oved Kechav Yevad Shabal Bas Yisrael Mahu, is he allowed to marry into the Kol or not? Omalo. Rav responded, Vlad kosher. He's not a mamzer. And this again is back to Abaye, who said to Rav Yosef, why are you relying on the tradition, the transmission of Rabbi Dimi, who says that Vlad in this case is a mamzer? Why not rely on a tradition of Ravin that according to Rebbe, the Vlad is kosher? And not only that, Rav himself in the next generation said that the Vlad is kosher. Amalei. So the guy said to Rav, well, I shouldn't call him a guy. His father was a guy. He's Jewish. Havli bratoch, I want to marry your daughter. Lo yehivnelach. Rav says, no. I'm not going to give you my daughter to marry off. Omar Shimi bar Chiyol Rav. 1 second. Amri Inshi. There's a davar guzma that people say, sort of like an idiomatic phrase, and we're going to apply it here to your response in this case. Gamla b'modai. In a place called Modai, means, right? They have a gamla, akaba rakba. And this camel is able to dance with its 4 legs inside a utensil. It's standing in a utensil, a kli, that can measure off 1 kaf, very small volume. Hakaba v'gamla. Meaning we see the kav, and we see the camel, v'ha modai, and there's modai, v'lo rakta. But the camel is not dancing inside the kli that holds the cow. In other words, sometimes you say something and everybody realizes that it's not so. We realize that you cannot have a camel, no matter where it comes from, dancing in a kli that holds a cow. And what he means to tell, this Shimi Bachir means to tell Rav, that you're saying that the Akum Habal al Bas Yisrael is the Vlad kosher l'kol, and Allah l'maisa, you wouldn't give your daughter to this fellow whose father is a guy. So, like, who are you fooling over here? You're like telling me a story about a dancing camel. So Rav says to Rav Simi Bar, Chia I Nehevi, Ki Yoshua ben Nun, even if this son of a guy on his father's side will be as great as Yoshua ben Nun, and Yoshua ben Nun is, says the Marsha, 1 second. Lirmoslo. Sheyoshua ben Nun haisalo rak bas. So Yeshua ben Nun only had a daughter, didn't have sons. And if I give my daughter to marry her off to even someone as great as Yeshua ben Nun, and from that marriage to this Ben Akum, there'll be a daughter marriage, she won't be able to marry a Kohen. So even though the child is not a mamzer, but there's a psul kahuna here. And therefore, Rav says, Lo yehivna le brate, I don't want to give over my daughter to even someone as great as Yeshua ben Nun, because then she'll give birth to a daughter, and the daughter will be Pasal Laguna. Amalei, so Shimi Bar Chia says to Rav, Ihava ki Yoshua ben Nun, let's say this Ben Akka will be as great as Yeshua ben Nun. Imar lo yoifle, if you Rav, Mar, he talks in the third person, the master, will not give your daughter to marry. Achrini yoifle, will others give their daughter to marry this man who's as great as Yeshua ben Nun? Imar lo yoifle, achrini nami lo yoifle. You're basically locking him up and making it impossible for him to get married. In any event, Rav stood his own ground, and this man, the Ben Akum, lo havi ka'ozil mikame, he sat himself down in front of Rav to make like a kind of a public strike. I'm not moving from the spot until he gives me his daughter to marry. That was a bad mistake on the part of this Ben Akum, and he overstepped all bounds with a chutbah neret to Rav, the Gadol Hador, and as a result, Rav gave him a whammy, and he died. Rav goes on to tell us other Amoroim who accept the principle that the Ben is not a mamzer, even though his father's an Akum. The Afra of Masna Moriba, Letera, the Afra of Yehuda, emphasize Rav Yehuda, we'll come back to Rav Yehuda, Modabo Letera, Dechi Asa, again, a son of an Akum, whose mother was Jewish, came Lekavi to Rav Yehuda, asking Rav Yehuda if he's allowed to marry into the Kol, or maybe he's a mamzer. Amalei, Rav Yehuda said to him, Zil Itmar. In truth, you're allowed to marry into Klal Yisrael, but go hide yourself, go far out to a place where no one knows who you are. And there you'll marry a Bas Yisrael. Because if they'll recognize you here locally, they're not going to give you their daughter. And you'll end up in a situation where you won't be able to get married. So from the fact that Rav Yehuda told him to go out there and disguise himself or be an unknown anonymous person and get married, it means that there's no violation of Mamzeris, because a Mamzer is not allowed to marry an Ishak Shera. Oh, your only other option is Nesiv Bas Mina, find another girl whose father is an Akum, a Jewish girl. But you're not allowed to marry a Mamzeris or a Shivcha because you're not a Mamzer. So we see from this psak of Rabbi Yehuda that the child of this relationship is kosher. V'chi asa lekami de Rava, a son of a guy came in front of Rava. Amalei, Rava said to him, "Oh, delay, oh, go into Golus, go find a long farm out exile place where nobody knows you, and then you'll be able to marry Bas Yilchera. Oh, Nesiv Bas Minach, find another Bas who's in the same exact situation as you, her father is a guy." So people from that area sent a question to Rabbah. It means there were Shutvim and an Eved, and one of the two Shutvim was Meshacher, his Chelek, which makes that half of the Eved into a Ben Chorin, and the other Shutaf did not agree to free the Eved, his half of the Eved. And now this Chatzi Eved, Chatzi Ben Chorin has a relationship with Baal Bas Yisrael. Now, what's the status of the Vlad? Is the Vlad a Mamzer or kosher? Hamalahu. Rabbi responded, Hashda, Eved Kulo, we paskin, I'm reading kosher. Based on all the evidence that we had, and so many Amoroim were Matirim Lakol. That's Yomi boil if he's only half of an Eved, and the other half is a full-fledged Jew. It goes without saying that the Vlad is kosher. Amarav Yosef Marad the Shmaitita, the Baal Hashmua, who said that Oved Eved, the Oved Korban Baal of like kosher, Manu, who is it, as we saw just recently, and here we turn to Bevheim base, Manu, Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Yehuda himself, who was Moreh, that Eved V'Yakov Baal Bas Yisrael is allowed to come to the call, the child is not a mamzer, but rather kosher l'kol. Rabbi Yehuda Mishachetzi Eved Chetzi Ben Chorin Baal Bas Yisrael also Vlad Ein Lo Takana. The Vlad of such a relationship, whose father is a Chatzi Eved Chetzi Ben Chorin, has no way of entering into Klal Yisrael. He can't marry a Jewish girl because he's a mamzer. And even someone who's machshir, the Vlad, who is born to an Eved Baal Bas Yisrael, nevertheless he agrees that in the case of a Vlad who is born to a Chatzi Eved Chatzi Ben Chorin, the child is for sure a mamzer. Why is that so?